I'm going to talk to you today a bit around our weather operations, what we do to prepare for our kind of seasons, and then how we manage that day-to-day weather on the network. Right, does this jump straight through? There we go. Right, so we know the weather hasn't been particularly kind to us of late. I think last year we got up to letter L in the named storms. And on the screen there, you can see some of the impact across our network. We've seen Northampton Station turn into a canal. We've had line-side fires quite recently, particularly up in Cumbria. We've had quite a lot of earthwork failures. We've also had a lot of adhesion challenges, particularly throughout 2024. And then we've also had quite a lot of storms that have blown some of our favourite items back onto the track, our trampolines being the top favourite when our line-side neighbours forget to pin those down. And in the bottom left there, that sheeting on the railway, that is actually Banbury Depot roof, and that flew off in Storm Eunice back in February 2022. So we know the weather's not particularly kind to us, and having I think it was an awards event with Andrew not too long ago, and Andrew said we want a really boringly reliable railway, and these are some of the challenges that make that incredibly difficult for us. So I want to talk to you a bit about some of our challenges, particularly those that are quite pertinent to track, how we manage them on the network, and also why your roles in track maintenance are so important to everything that we do and how we operate the network. So I'll start off with winter. Now that feels like a very distant memory given what we've had lately with this very warm and very dry weather. But those cold wintry conditions bring us quite a lot of challenges across the network. Although those snow days are really few and far between, when they do happen, they can cause significant impact. We see the performance of our assets starting to decline. We've got safety challenges at stations, and also the safety of our staff and our employees to try and get them out to those work locations as well. During those cold and icy conditions, we also see tunnel icing, and there's quite a dramatic photo there of some tunnel icing in years gone by. And then we also have our third rail icing as well. But thankfully, our weather forecaster Met Desk actually provide a forecast for this. And for those areas where we have third rail across the network, we go out and we run winter anti-icing treatments, and we also have conductor rails across the network. So again, your roles in that track maintenance, making sure that everything is prepared, is incredibly pivotal for us. Something a little bit closer to home and something that will be incredibly important for this summer, and I'll touch on that a little bit later when I give you a bit of a forecast, because let's be honest, that's probably why you're all still here. So in 2022, we saw some real extreme heat across our network, and that hot weather, as well as the direct sunlight that we receive, can cause the steel to heat up and begin to expand. We see those temperatures rise and fall with various things. It isn't just that ambient air temperature. It's about the amount of cloud or clear sky there is, the wind speed, and coupling that with that ambient air temperature. See on the right-hand side, which I think I've stolen with pride from someone in technical authority, so apologies if this is yours and I've not credited it. That picture there on the right-hand side shows those failures and that real challenge that we have when we have that extreme heat. In 2022, we had 40 degrees in July, and I think people often forget that come December, we had minus 15 in some parts of the network. Dealing with both of those extremes over such a short space of time is incredibly challenging for us. We also have challenges with our overhead lines, and they're super susceptible to that hot weather as well, and they begin to expand and sag. Again, 2022, we saw quite a lot of challenges on the East Coast main line, and most of that network had to be closed for that day where it was incredibly hot. So we do look to run at reduced line speed if that is going to happen, to reduce the risk of the pantograph pulling down those lines and causing damage. I mentioned on this slide around the clear sky or the amount of cloud cover, and I think that's really important. So in May, if it was a sunny day outside right now, which I know it isn't quite, but think back to yesterday when it was a lovely sunny day, that solar radiation is as strong yesterday as it is late July. People often think that July, August are our hottest time of the year, and it's when we're most susceptible to track buckling. That's not quite true. We can be really susceptible in late April into May, and we often get caught out, particularly if it is clear sky, high pressure conditions. So just one to bear in mind, and again, stressing the urgency of us preparing our network in time for the start of that hot weather season. Going into autumn, so the combination of leaf fall, low winds, and that small amount of precipitation is perfect conditions for poor rail adhesion. It allows the build-up of contamination on the railhead. Strong winds blow the leaves further away from the network. Same with intense rainfall or heavy precipitation that also manages to wash the leaves away and help them degrade. But that perfect combination of when they just settle right on the railway line is when it brings us some considerable challenges. So during the season, we use railhead treatment trains, but also new technologies such as Interflon to treat and remove that contamination and reduce the risk of low rail adhesion. It also reduced the risk of wrong side track circuit failures, signals being passed at danger, and also station overruns. Similarly to that Conrail forecast, our weather forecasters actually provide an adhesion forecast for us. And this is provided on a regional basis, but also where we're known to have some real challenges on our high-risk sites. That allows us to effectively manage those areas and potentially look at other interventions that we could put in place, such as hand sanding, to help improve the adhesion across the network. So, how do we prepare for extreme weather? So these are the types of forecasts that me and my team receive on a daily basis from our forecasting partner. The top right there is the adhesion forecast. Below that is our hot running rail forecast. And at the bottom is what we get every day, which is our RAG status, show how kind of risk, what the weather's doing, the biggest risk we've got across the network. So we've got a wide range of different products. Some of the other ones there that I've not mentioned, that aren't shown, but I'll mention Convective Alerting Tool, or CAT, which some of you may have heard of. That's all around forecasting for intense downpours of rain, typically thunderstorm scenarios in summer. And we also get that conductor rail forecast as well. And these are incredibly important because these drive our operational response. So when we get an adverse somewhere on the network, and this is the scenario from Storm Eunice back in 2022, we then call a route EWAT. So some of you may have attended those calls. And during a route EWAT, our operation colleagues will come together in each of the routes with our train operating companies, our freight operating companies, station managers, and also our communications team to discuss the weather event alongside our forecasters. We then come together and we discuss about the mitigations we may apply, what speed restrictions we'll put in place, and passenger communications are also really key to this part of the conversation. We also look at how we can then recover the network as well, and how we can look at mobilising any additional resource that we might need to help with that recovery. If multiple routes are showing as extreme, and as they were in the scenario with Storm Eunice, we'll actually look to put a national EWAT in place, and that will be led by the National Operating Centre and the National Weather Team, supported by Met Desk, Department for Transport. We've also got British Transport Police on there, the National Communications Team, as well as the Rail Delivery Group. And we come together to create that national coordinated response, again focusing on those mitigations and how we respond and recover. So that's very much about how we deal with the day in, day out and how it affects us. But what about that seasonal preparation? I spoke earlier in my presentation about the importance of being prepared for each of those seasons and the importance of getting our infrastructure ready for that, the change in weather. So as a national weather team, we set out guidance and policies for operational weather management and seasonal preparedness. We have 3 documents called the GB Rail Approach documents for each of those seasons. We have the hot weather approach, the adhesion approach document, and the cold weather approach document. And our seasons delivery teams across the routes collate the responses to each of those control measures, liaising with their route teams in operations, maintenance, and engineering to understand how prepared we are going into that season. These responses are then submitted to myself and my team, who provide that national picture of preparedness, highlighting any key risks and how we may mitigate those from a national perspective if possible. Now, we've just finished our summer assurance, our hot weather assurance, and that's just actually been reported up to our executive leadership team. We are slightly behind the curve this year. We're not quite as prepared as we'd like to be. We do see some challenges, particularly with our critical rail temperatures going into this summer, and that has been highlighted, and we're working with the routes to address those actions. But it's really important that we gather that picture and we support each other and our route colleagues to make sure that we are all prepared. One thing I will note, so technically the winter period or the cold weather period does run from the 1st of October through to the 31st of March, but then it is overlaid with the adhesion season. Each route does it slightly differently. Some routes have a predominant focus on adhesion and then winter or cold weather, but they do kind of run in parallel. So what are we doing to improve for the future? So this is a slide, there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'm sure these are being shared afterwards. But it's all around how we're improving, particularly following the tragic incident in Carmont back in August 2020. We know there's an opportunity to improve, particularly looking at our technologies that we use for weather forecasting, and some of the projects on there that you may know and you may actually be involved in. A couple of those that I will draw out, Prima, and that is looking at the proportionate response to rainfall. So what speed do we apply? If we are getting a convective event or a heavy frontal rainfall event, are we applying the right speed that is proportionate to the risk across our network? We have a similar tool called Gusto, and Wales and Western were championing this to begin with. That's very, very similar, but looking at the risks around wind and where on the network is most susceptible to high winds. We've got key route strategies, so proactively looking at how we can prepare for that extreme heat, and those are some of the recommendations that came out of 2022, and our routes are currently working with their engineering teams to work through their key route strategies. So there's quite a lot of work that we are doing to continuously improve, and this is predominantly the work of the Weather Risk Task Force and their wider teams out in the route to improve all things weather. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was the Rail Operations Weather Service. The Rail Operations Weather Service is going to be the replacement for our current forecasting site. It will still be with MetDesk, but it will be a Network Rail-owned system. That means that we have the ability to integrate our own information into that system in future to be able to use that information for its best value, to be able to get the most from it. So it'll be an accessible platform, it'll have enhanced forecasting data, more map-based, and it'll enable a more hazard and impact-based approach to operational decision-making. So we'll have longer forecasting horizons in there, better planning, particularly in terms of rostering for those extreme weather events, customizable interfaces that help improve decision speed, but it able to unlock that future potential. And I think that's where there's some real value. Things like integrating the critical rail temperatures register. If we're able to do that, that will definitely give us the ability to really target where we might need to send watch persons or apply speeds. So, the little bit that you've probably all been waiting for, what does this summer look like? Now, I know things are changing a little bit over the next few days, and we are going to get some autumn settled weather. So for keen gardeners amongst us, that's fantastic news, and our soils aren't going to be as dry as we have seen them. I think this is the driest May on record so far, and if things are set to continue, I think some areas have had no rainfall at all for the majority of May. That does give us some risks, so when we're going to get that rainfall over this weekend, we might see quite a bit of runoff, but it's welcome relief, and particularly for our line-side fire risk, which has been quite high recently, that is absolutely fantastic for us. But looking ahead to kind of middle, late June, on the graph, what you can see is the yellow and orange areas are showing high pressure, the blue and darker blue areas are that low pressure. So you have, for the June scenario, you've got that influence from the continent, and you are going to get warmer air moving up over the UK. Particularly if the soil is still dry, that could mean some really intense heat waves for us, particularly towards the back end of June. So thinking again about the possibility of track buckling in those scenarios, we do need to make sure we are incredibly prepared for later in June. Myself and my team are doing a check back in with our routes to see where we're at and make sure that we're all aware of what is occurring. So, good potential for a hot June, hotter than last year. Great for us at home, maybe less great for our network. Possibility of some really high rail temperatures at time. Western areas could see some heavy rain, so that is the influence of that kind of dark and low pressure area off the coast of Ireland in the Atlantic. And there's a risk of thunderstorms at the end of some of those hot spells. July has potential to be a little bit breezier in Scotland. Again, that low pressure kind of moves off towards Scandinavia, but the south could be quite warm. High pressure again, kind of dominating in the area. Lack of rainfall expected in the south. There are going to be a few hot days. If anyone can think back to July 2023, when it was very wet and very windy every single Saturday in July, particularly in the run-up to my wedding when I wasn't very hopeful, it's definitely going to be a lot warmer, a lot better than that, but we're not expecting to see as extreme heat as July 2022. And then moving out to August, again, very similar scenario to June. We have got a little bit more of Atlantic influence there, so we probably will get some more wind and some more rain moving in off the Atlantic. And that warmth could be there, but it'd be quite short-lived, isolated compared to early summer. And I believe that is my slides. Thank you, everybody.